Andy Warhol, pop artist. Campbell's Soup Can, I Can We Can project. How often do you eat a delicious bowl of soup? Do you ever pay attention to the can it comes out of? Campbell's soup cans, a staple in every household, became the subject of a painting by Andy Warhol, a famous artist of the 1960s pop art movement. In this lesson, we will learn about his life and the art he created. The life of Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol was born in 1928 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. His parents were from Slovakia, a country in Central Europe. In 1945, Andy began college at the Carnegie Institute of Technology in Pittsburgh to study pictorial design. Upon graduation, Andy moved to New York City and got a job as a commercial artist, working for magazines and a television station, among other companies. He became a very successful commercial artist and had a unique style of using blotted lines and rubber stamps to create his art. The pop art movement. Andy began creating paintings and in 1961 introduced the concept of pop art paintings of commercial products. Pop art was an art movement from the 1950s and 1960s where artists drew their inspiration from comics, movie stars, and store-bought products like cans. This was a completely new and different direction for the art world. In 1962, Warhol debuted his famous Campbell's Soup Can painting. So why does Andy Warhol paint soup cans? A can of soup is a quick dinner and easy to get in any store. Pop artists painted items that were inexpensive and simple. They were not looking for something exclusive. In fact, they chose items that were in mass production. During this time, the Campbell's soup can was considered a new kind of fare. Everyone was having it, even the celebrities were eating soup. Andy Warhol ensured that all of his labels were consistent in style. The initial soup can was painted, but later he turned to screen printing to ensure all his soup cans matched. Warhol himself said, "Pop art is about liking things," and claimed that he ate Campbell's soup every day for 20 years. For him, it was a quintessential American product. A message about perseverance from Andy Warhol. The doors don't open automatically within the art world. You must force them open with hard work and determination. Even at that point, you will likely face setbacks. That is why you must adhere to the spirit of perseverance. The key is to keep an eye on the horizon. Don't allow a failed art exhibit to defeat you. Andy Warhol. After struggling to get his art known, Andy Warhol said if something was going to happen, it would. And if it wasn't and didn't, something else would happen. In other words, Warhol understood that there would be another opportunity for his artwork to capture the attention of the public eye. His art marketing philosophy offers words that everyone should take to heart. Now that we have explored the life of Andy Warhol, we are going to integrate the We Can project into our learning. The We Can project, a service learning initiative that inspires and profoundly connects students of all ages to the difference they can make in their lives, their communities, and the world. Jesse Rubin. I can versus we can. An I can statement is something only you can do. This statement would be your personal goal, dreams, or successes. Example, I can be an art teacher. A we can statement is something everyone can do. This statement would focus on helping your family, school, community, or the world. Example, we can be kind. So take a minute to think about it. What is your I can? What is your we can? It is now time for you to join me in creating an Andy Warhol inspired I can, we can, Campbell's soup can.
I hope you enjoyed the video leading up to this. Right now we're going to start the project. We are going to be making a Campbell's soup can. This is Andy Warhol's staple project that he always does. Originally he painted his soup cans. We're actually going to use a watercolor technique to make our soup cans. Our soup cans, we're going to stick with the exact same style as his soup can and also a traditional Campbell soup can because that's what he does. So I'm going to start with my ruler. If you don't have a ruler, that's okay. If you don't have a ruler, you could do 2 finger spaces and put a dot, and 2 finger spaces and put a dot. That would make your soup can in the center like he likes for his artwork. So I'm going to use my ruler, and I'm going to lay the ruler down. And I'm going to put a dot. And then I'm going to go over on this side. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. So this will keep my soup can center on my paper. Now the top of the soup can has an arch and an arch. This is how we're going to make a cylinder. And then I have to do the same thing down here. That's my cylinder for the top of my soup can. If you don't have a ruler, that's okay. You could use the edge of a paper, you could use the edge of a piece of cardboard, or you can just try and draw your line the best that you can. But I'm going to use a ruler. So I'm going to line it up. I'm going to go down. Go down on that side. And then I need to do a curved edge, just like the curve on this cylinder soup can. And I'm going to curve the edge and attach it. And then I went a little bit up too high on this side, so I'm just going to erase it. I'm going to start at the top of the soup can and work my way down. I'm going to integrate my own designs into this exact same style, but I'm going to try to do this traditional top like he has, just like his soup can. So he has large black spaces. Maybe your black spaces don't look like mine, but you're going to make shapes that would represent the shape of the soup can. So I just did that. It's kind of like his, not the same. You don't want to do the exact same thing as him. So the next step is the title. I'm going to do an Eagles as my title. Your title could be Eagles, it could be Perseverance, it could be your last name. We are going to focus on I can because it's a can. So this is going to be an I can or a we can project. So I'm going to put Eagles, but first I'm going to lightly draw a line. This is going to be my guideline so that I don't draw crooked or going up or going down. Because on the soup can you can see how perfectly straight those letters are. Now you can do yours in cursive, you could do any fancy font you want. I'm just going to do a traditional font. Now here is a trick. I wrote the word Eagles because I know that that's what I'm going to do as my title up here. So what you can do is if you figure out how many letters there are, you'll be able to find your middle letter. So S, A apostrophe, G and E, and L is my middle letter in Eagles. So that tells me that I have to put an L in the middle of my can. Then I can look at this to draw the rest of my letters, and I can be fancy with my letters however I want. And then I need to do the other side. And the trick with this is that you now have a fairly center. It's a little bit off because the comma is not as large, but it's fairly center so that it's not all the way squished on one side or all the way squished on the other side. This way, if you write small, either way your words are going to be centered on your can. Then the next thing, I move down. This says condensed here. I'm going to write I can because I'm going to do an I can. You could do a we can if you would like to. As we know, an I can is something only you can do. So I can say I can be an artist. I could say I can be a cheerleader because I was a cheerleader. I would not put I can be a football player because I am not going to be a football player. But some of you out there might be football players, so you might choose football. That's totally up to you, but a we can is something everybody can do. Everybody can be kind. Everybody can be responsible and help their parents. Everybody can do their schoolwork. So we can persevere, we can be kind, we can help our parents. That's something everybody can do. So you're choosing an I can or a we can, and you're gonna write whatever it is here. So I'm gonna write I can. And I'm just writing it normal. And again, if you wanted to, you could do the trick that the C is the middle, the space in the A, the I in the N, and then that would put it in the middle. The next thing you need is this line. So I'm going to draw my line. That's on the traditional soup can. Right here, I'm going to erase because this is where you're going to put your logo. Your logo is going to be, this is their logo. Your logo is going to be something that has to do with your I can or we can. So think about what your I can is. My I can is going to be I can be an artist. So I'm going to draw an art palette and a paintbrush. Now if your I can is I can play baseball, maybe you'd put a baseball and a baseball bat. Your I can is not going to be a picture of you doing it. It's going to be a logo. So you've got to think simple. So if it's football, you would draw a football. But I'm going to draw my paint palette. So I'm going to draw a paint palette right here. And then I had said I was going to draw a paintbrush. Now my paintbrush I'm going to draw over the paint palette. I mean, maybe you want to draw a paint too. So maybe you're going to be an artist too. You could copy what I'm doing if you want. But I need to erase because my paintbrush is on top of the palette. So then I'm going to draw my little circles. And on a paint palette, you should probably have 6 circles. But my last circle would actually be under that. So that's red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet. Because those are the colors that we would use on a paint palette to mix things. So I continue my line, I move down. So I got my title, my I can or we can, and my logo. Down here is where I write be an artist. So I'm going to put B, and I'm trying to be centered again. And if you have to, you can erase. Now artist, I'm going to do it just like I showed you. The T and the I are splitting the center. So I find the center of my soup can, and I put the T and the I. And then I put art and ST, and that made sure that it was center. Now, the last thing I need to do is put a little line down here because that's what the soup can has. And then there's my soup can. Next, we're going to color our soup cans. So I'm going to start with black Sharpie. You could use crayons, you can use colored pencils, you can use Sharpies, you can use washable markers, whatever you want. I am going to show you the watercolor technique again with the markers. So I'm going to trace everything with the black Sharpie. The reason I have to trace everything with the black Sharpie is because I'm going to use the watercolor technique, and if I don't do this in black Sharpie, when I go to use the watercolor technique, it would all go away. So just like Andy Warhol's soup can, I'm going to trace these and color them in black. You would color yours in black as well to make it traditional. If you don't have a Sharpie, my suggestion would be that you would do this in black washable marker. and then just color your top gray. Don't do the watercolor technique on it if you don't have Sharpie. Or you could use black crayon and then just color the rest of it gray. And it's okay if you get off the pencil lines because, like I always say, just erase them. And I'm leaving this. I'm going to color that with marker. So I traced everything. I left this because I'm going to do this the same color that matches my top. You're going to do the same thing. If you don't want your top one color, that's fine. Just leave this white because traditionally the bottom of the can is white. But you could do this different colors if you want. If you wanted to use a couple different colors up here, you can. I am just going to use red, and I'm going to trace that in red. I'm going to color this with the markers. I'm going to color up here. So, I'm going to start at the top and work my way down. Or actually, I'm going to erase my pencil lines first because there's a lot of pencil lines. So again, I'm going to start at the top and work my way down. And I'm doing this technique, that's the watercolor technique. I don't color the entire thing because when I add the water is going to smear it. So I only colored a little bit. Down here, I'm just going to color this whole thing. I'm not going to watercolor this. It's just too tiny, and it's a logo, so we kind of want the logo to pop out. You don't want the logo to blend in with the rest of the writing on the can. When you look at a can, probably the first thing you see is the logo. So you want it to pop. And I'm going to color this brown. And then I'm going to go in and erase my pencil lines again because I made my circles a little bit bigger. The reason I made my circles a little bit bigger is because by the time you trace these little circles, if you don't make them a little bit bigger, they'll only get smaller. And then you'll have little itty bitty circles. We won't even be able to see the colors on the palette. And then I have my two colors that are behind the paintbrush. So I'm going to erase again. And with washable markers, you need to be careful that you don't do that because it will smear. But that's okay because that color is actually going to be the last color of my rainbow, so it will stand out. It will cover up perfectly fine. And I'm gonna choose green for my paintbrush handle. Paintbrush can be any color, as you know. And then I'm gonna do this for my paintbrush. The top of the can, I said I'm doing mine red. You can do yours whatever color you wish. For the watercolor technique, again, you don't color the whole thing. All you do is pretty much outline. If I wanted to, I could trace all my eagles writing. It would make it a little brighter, but I'm just gonna go right around all of this and trace it. It will be plenty of color for it to smear with the water. Down here I use no water. I'm only using water here and here. Down here you want to keep the white, you want to keep the line, and you want to keep your logo. So I'm going to do the watercolor technique. And when I go over it with the water, it smears, but still gives it a nice shading, and especially for the edges of the can, because it kind of makes it give the can a rounded effect to make it look a little more three-dimensional. So I wash my brush good, and you could use Q-tips for this. I did use Q-tips previously. I just chose to use a paintbrush for this. And I need to be very, very careful that I don't go near that palette, because the palette is not permanent. So if I get water on it, it's going to do exactly what this red is doing. And then that would ruin my logo. I don't want to ruin my logo for my can. Arm in the paint, or drag my hand through the paint. So if I turn it, then I can paint the other side of the paper without having to worry about smearing it. And that marker gives it a nice bold outline, so it makes it stand out. Alright, now we're going to work on the background now that the painting is dry. For the background, I'm just going to use markers and crayons. Very simple. Andy Warhol did a lot of his backgrounds very simple. This would be your foreground. This is considered your background. So I'm just going to do very, very, very simple background, because that's what he would do. So I'm just going to do stripes going down. And the paper is a little wrinkly. On either side, I'm going to do this. And I'm only going to use one color. He really liked a lot of his backgrounds to be monochromatic, meaning one color with different shades. Now I'm going to do it on this side too. The same design. Now I'm going to pick out all my blue shades out of this crayon box. Now if you wanted to, you could do the watercolor technique in your background. I chose not to. And I chose a whole bunch of different shades. They look very similar, but when you color, they will be different. And I'm going to leave some of my background white, which is okay, if you would like to. While I'm coloring, we're going to go over the steps of the project, since this was a longer project. So step one was to draw the shape of the can. And I did this stripe a little different, that's okay. Step one was to draw the shape of the can. Step two, I drew those shapes on the top of the can, these black shapes, to make you recognize the top of the can. Then I picked a word for the top line of my can, and I want it to represent the same Campbell's soup can that he did. And he had an apostrophe after Campbell, so I put an apostrophe after Eagles. I had talked about how you could have made it your last name. You could have done perseverance, since we're talking about I cans and we cans, but apostrophe S was what we were trying for. Then we wrote I can or we can here according to whether you wanted an I can or a we can statement. We had talked about how I can is something only you can do. That's a goal. Your we can would be something that everybody can do. So everybody could be kind. Everybody could be responsible. Everybody could help their parents. Then we put a logo. Your logo should represent whatever your I can or we can is. My logo is a paint palette because I chose be an artist. Then down here in the center you wrote what your I can or we can was, and then you drew the bottom of the can just like Andy Warhol. Then we had talked about how the top half of the can is one color, whatever color you wanted. If you wanted to put a couple colors, that would be okay, but you're not drawing designs and pictures up here. You want it very basic. And then you want your logo to be nice and bright and bold, so we didn't use the watercolor technique on that. So what I would do is I would continue this all the way up this side and all the way up this side, and that's what I would say for my background. You don't want your background too crazy because it's Andy Warhol. He's very simple and basic. Thank you.